The Galactic Council had rules, thousands of them. Regulations stacked upon regulations, all designed to keep the universe spinning in orderly, predictable patterns. Rule 847 subsection C was particularly clear. Inhabitants of Class 12 Deathworlds were strictly prohibited from participating in the proving grounds. Nobody questioned it. Why would they? I'm Kelrath, Senior Administrator for the Trial Registry, and I'd been processing applications for 243 cycles. In all that time, not once had a Deathworlder even tried to register. They knew better. Everyone knew better. Until the day the human walked in. She was small, compact, built like she'd been assembled from spare parts, and sheer stubbornness. Her hair was an unusual shade of copper red, pulled back in what I later learned was called a ponytail. She wore simple clothing, nothing fancy, and carried a duffel bag that looked older than some of our newest colony worlds. "I'm here to register for the trials," she announced, slapping a data pad on my desk with enough force to make me flinch. I blinked all 4 of my eyes in succession, a nervous habit. "I'm sorry. There must be some mistake. The trials are for qualified candidates only." "Yeah," she tapped the data pad. "That's why I'm here. Name's Kira Vale. Got my provisional citizenship last month. Been training for the past cycle. And I'm ready to prove myself." The office went quiet. 3 other applicants, a Threxian, a Volsari, and a Quell, all stopped what they were doing to stare. You have to understand, humans had only been part of the galactic community for about 5 cycles. They were still considered novelties. Dangerous novelties. I pulled up her file with trembling appendages. Sure enough, there it was. Kira Vale, age 24 standard years, born on Earth, registered citizen of the Terran Embassy Station. Everything was technically in order, except for one glaring problem. "Miss Vale," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're from Earth." "Last time I checked, yeah. Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, so I've heard." She leaned against my desk, arms crossed. "About 1,000,000 times. The regulations clearly state that Deathworld inhabitants cannot participate in the proving grounds. It's for safety reasons. Your kind, they're too tough, strong, capable?" Her mouth curved into something that might have been a smile, but looked more like a predator baring teeth. "Dangerous," I finished quietly. She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound bounced off the crystalline walls like thrown rocks. "Dangerous? Have you seen the creatures you people throw into those trials? I read the reports. Last cycle, you had someone fight a Corthan slasher. Those things have acid for blood and can tear through titanium plating." "Yes, but they're predictable. They follow patterns. Humans, you're unpredictable. The Council banned your species specifically because you don't know when to quit. You push beyond reasonable limits. You treat survival as a personal challenge. And that's a bad thing? I didn't have an answer for that." Kira leaned forward, her eyes, an unsettling shade of green, locked onto mine. "Look, Kelrath, I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want a fair shot. I've trained, I've studied, I've done everything your regulations require, except for one thing I can't change, which is where I was born. That doesn't seem fair, does it?" "Fair? The universe wasn't fair. The universe was orderly, structured, safe. That's what the Council provided. That's what we'd worked centuries to build." But something in her voice made me hesitate. "I'll need to contact my supervisor," I said finally. "You do that." She settled into a chair that was definitely not designed for human anatomy, looking perfectly comfortable despite the awkward angles. "I'll wait." My supervisor was a Quellian named Torvist, who had approximately 0 patience for what he called administrative complications. When I explained the situation, his response was immediate and predictable. Absolutely not. Denied. Rejected. Send her away. She's technically qualified, I pointed out. She's human. That's not actually listed as a disqualification in the current regulations. The ban was implemented through an executive order, not through formal legislative channels. There was a long pause. I could hear Torvist's breathing apparatus wheezing through the comlink. Are you seriously suggesting we allow a human into the trials? I'm suggesting that if we deny her without proper legal justification, we might be opening ourselves to a discrimination lawsuit. The humans are very fond of those. Another pause. Longer this time. Fine, Torvist finally growled. Let her register. But she goes through standard classification testing first. When she fails the preliminary assessments, we can deny her entry based on inadequate scores, not species discrimination. Problem solved. I disconnected and returned to the waiting area. Kira was still sitting there, now reading something on a handheld device, looking utterly unconcerned. You can register, I said. Provisionally. You'll need to complete the classification assessments first. She looked up, and that predator smile returned. When do we start? The testing facility was located 3 levels below the main administrative complex, a sprawling area filled with simulation chambers, physical assessment zones, and mental evaluation stations. The current record holder was a Threxian named Korvax, who'd scored an impressive 847 out of 1,000 possible points. Most species averaged somewhere between 400 and 600. Kira walked into the facility like she owned it. The first test was basic physical assessment. Strength, speed, endurance, reaction time, standard stuff. The examining technician, a nervous quell named Pritax, kept glancing at me as if expecting me to call the whole thing off. Just run the tests, I told him. Kira stripped down to what she called a tank top and shorts, revealing an alarming amount of exposed skin and muscle definition that made Pritax's eye stalks retract in discomfort. She stepped onto the testing platform. Grip strength test first, Pritax announced, his voice barely above a whisper. She took the measuring device, a standard grip meter calibrated for most galactic species, and squeezed. The meter exploded. Not metaphorically, it literally exploded. Sparks flew, the display shattered, and a small fire started that had to be extinguished with emergency foam. That's not supposed to happen, Pritax stammered. Kira examined her hand, looking mildly annoyed. Is my score still valid? I checked the backup readout before the system failed. The number made me dizzy. You exceeded the maximum calibration by 40%. Is that good? Nothing has ever exceeded maximum calibration. That's why it's called maximum. She shrugged. Got a replacement meter? We moved through the tests. She broke the sprint record. She shattered the endurance benchmark by running for 3 hours straight, without stopping, until Pritax finally begged her to quit because we needed to close the facility for the night. Her reaction time was so fast that the testing computer flagged it as an equipment error 5 times before we convinced it the readings were accurate. The mental assessments were equally disturbing. Strategy simulations that typically took candidates hours to solve, she completed in minutes. Pattern recognition tests designed to be deliberately confusing, she found almost insultingly easy. The only test she struggled with was long-term planning, but even then, her score was above average. By the time we finished, it was late into the station's night cycle. Pritax looked traumatized. I felt exhausted just watching the results compile. Kira stood there, barely winded, drinking something from a metal bottle. So, how'd I do? I stared at the final score displayed on my datapad. 1,247 points. She'd scored 1,247 points. That was nearly 50% higher than the current record. It was impossible. It was absolutely, completely, mathematically impossible. You cheated, I said flatly. Excuse me? Somehow. You cheated. This score is impossible. She walked over, looked at the pad, and smiled that terrifying smile again. Looks possible to me. I mean, it's right there on your screen. No species scores this high. It breaks the entire evaluation system. Maybe your evaluation system needs updating. She took another drink. So, am I in? I wanted to say no. Every instinct I had screamed at me to reject this application, to find some technicality, some loophole, anything to prevent what was clearly going to be a disaster. But the rules were clear. Any candidate scoring above 800 points automatically qualified for the trials. You're in, I heard myself say. You're in. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find it surrounded by security personnel, 3 council representatives, and Torvist, looking like he wanted to molt from stress. What did you do? He hissed at me. I followed regulations, I said defensively. You let a human qualify. Do you have any idea what this means? Before I could answer, one of the council representatives stepped forward. It was Ambassador Quellin, a Jarvian with silver scales and an expression that suggested I'd just declared war on half the galaxy. Administrator Kelrath, Quellin said, his voice dripping with disapproval. We need to discuss your recent approval. The human qualified under standard protocols, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Her scores were legitimate. Her scores are impossible. We've reviewed the testing footage. We believe there was equipment malfunction. The equipment was tested before and after. Everything functioned normally. Then the tests themselves are flawed. They weren't designed to accommodate human physiology. I felt a spark of anger, which was unusual for me. So you're saying we should deny her because our tests aren't adequate? Shouldn't we fix the tests instead? Quellin's scales rippled, a sign of irritation. You're being deliberately difficult. I'm being factual. She met every requirement. She followed every rule. If we deny her now, it sets a precedent that anyone can be excluded based on species rather than merit. This isn't about discrimination, another representative chimed in, a Volsari named Threxus. This is about safety. The trials are dangerous enough without adding human unpredictability. Then make the trials safer, I suggested. The look Threxus gave me suggested that was possibly the worst thing I could have said. The argument continued for 2 hours. Back and forth, circular logic, political maneuvering, veiled threats about my career prospects. Finally, they reached a compromise that satisfied no one. Kira could participate, but with conditions. She'd be placed in the highest difficulty bracket, normally reserved for the most experienced warriors. She'd have no team support, which was unusual since most candidates worked in groups. And if she caused any incidents, meaning if she embarrassed the council by being too successful, her citizenship status would be reviewed. It was petty, vindictive, and obviously designed to make her fail. When I delivered the news, Kira just nodded. Fine by me. When's the first trial? 3 days. You'll be competing against 47 other candidates, most of them military veterans with decades of experience. Good. I like a challenge. I studied her face, trying to understand what drove this bizarre creature. Why are you doing this? You could live a comfortable life on the embassy station. Why risk the trials? She was quiet for a moment, her expression turning serious. Back on Earth, I grew up in a place where people told me what I couldn't do every single day. Couldn't do this because I was too small. Couldn't do that because I was too young. Couldn't try this because I was the wrong gender. I got tired of hearing no from people who never even gave me a chance. She stood up, shouldering her duffel bag. So when I heard about these trials, about how they test the best of the best, I thought, why not? Why not prove that humans belong here just as much as anyone else? Why not show the whole galaxy that Earth doesn't produce weaklings? You might die, I said quietly. Everybody dies, she replied. But not everybody really lives. She walked out of my office, leaving me sitting there wondering if I'd just helped start something wonderful or catastrophic. Probably both. The day of the trials arrived with all the ceremony and spectacle the council loved. The arena was packed with thousands of spectators from dozens of species. Vendors sold overpriced food. Bookmakers took bets on the outcomes. Somewhere in the crowd, I knew there were probably journalists ready to cover what they expected to be either a historic moment or a spectacular failure. I had a private booth reserved for administrators, which gave me a clear view of the staging area. The candidates were gathering, each one representing the best their species had to offer. Thrixians in powered armor, Vulsari with their natural weapons enhanced by technology, Quell pilots with neural interfaces to combat drones, all professionals, all deadly. And then there was Kira. She walked in wearing simple combat gear, no fancy armor, no weapons visible except for a knife strapped to her thigh. Compared to the others, she looked almost comically underprepared. The other candidates noticed her immediately. I could see them staring, pointing, their body language radiating confusion and disdain. The trial master, a massive Korthan named Drelix, stood at the center of the arena. His voice boomed through the speakers, artificially amplified to ensure everyone could hear. Welcome, candidates, to the proving grounds. Today, you face the gauntlet of ascension, a test of skill, strength, and survival. You will enter the combat zone in waves. Your objective is simple. Reach the extraction point on the far side of the arena. Between you and that goal are obstacles, hazards, and competitors. You may work together or alone. You may fight or flee. But only those who reach the extraction point will advance to the next round. He paused for dramatic effect. The gauntlet begins now! The arena floor split open, revealing the combat zone below. It was a nightmare landscape of rough terrain, artificial structures, and hidden dangers. Traps, both mechanical and biological. Environmental hazards. Combat drones programmed to test reflexes and tactics. The first wave of candidates rushed in, spreading out immediately, each following their trained strategies. Kira walked in like she was strolling through a park. She didn't rush, didn't panic, just moved forward with steady, confident steps, her eyes scanning everything. The first trap activated, razor wire shooting up from the ground in a deadly web pattern. 3 candidates got caught, their shields barely protecting them from the cutting edges. Kira saw it coming a half-second before it triggered. She jumped, planted one foot on a rising post, and used it to vault over the entire trap zone. She landed in a roll, came up running, and kept going. A combat drone descended from above, weapons charging. Standard protocol was to find cover and return fire. Kira ran toward it. The drone fired. She dodged, not with any fancy technology or energy shields, but just by moving faster than the targeting system could track. She jumped, grabbed the drone with both hands, and ripped a panel off its side. Then she pulled out a handful of components and dropped the now dead machine. I watched her move through the gauntlet like it was choreographed. Every obstacle, every trap, every challenge she handled with a combination of raw physicality and quick thinking that made the other candidates look slow. A Thrixian candidate tried to block her path, probably thinking an easy elimination would improve his chances. He was twice her size, covered in armor, and armed with an energy lance. She kicked him. Just kicked him. One solid kick to the center of his chest plate. The Thrixian flew backward 15 feet and crashed into a wall, his armor cracking from the impact. The crowd went silent. Then someone started cheering. Then more joined in. Within seconds, the entire arena was roaring. Kira didn't stop, didn't celebrate, just kept moving forward. She reached the extraction point in 12 minutes. The second-place candidate arrived 4 minutes later, looking exhausted and confused. When the final results were posted, Kira Vale had the fastest time, the highest combat efficiency rating, and 0 damage taken. I sat in my booth, staring at the scores, and realized something important. The rules had just changed, and the galaxy was never going to be the same. The aftermath of the first trial was chaos in the most organized, bureaucratic way possible. Emergency council sessions, heated debates broadcast across 3 sectors, accusations of regulation violations, demands for retesting, and approximately 700 formal complaints filed within the first hour. I sat through most of it, watching species representatives argue about whether Kira's performance was legal, ethical, or even physically possible according to known xenobiology. Her bone density alone should have made those movements impossible, argued a Quell scientist named Vexrin. The G-forces from that vault maneuver would have shattered lesser skeletons. Lesser? Ambassador Quellen seized on the word. Are you suggesting human physiology is superior? I'm suggesting it's different. Radically different. We may have underestimated the adaptations required for surviving on a Class 12 Deathworld. The debate spiraled from there. By the time the Council reached a decision, it was already night cycle again. The verdict was predictable and cowardly. Kira could continue, but under increased scrutiny. Any rules, violation, however minor, would result in immediate disqualification. They were hoping she'd slip up, give them an excuse. I found Kira in the competitors' rest area, surrounded by curious candidates who'd gone from dismissive to fascinated in record time. A Volsari named Rexith was asking her about Earth's gravity. A young Thrixian, not the one she'd kicked, wanted to know about human training methods. Mostly just repetition, she was saying. We call it practice. You do something over and over until your body remembers it without thinking. Muscle memory, Rexith said, nodding. We have similar concepts, but your application seems more intensive. Well, when everything on your planet is trying to kill you, you learn fast or you don't learn at all. She noticed me approaching and waved. Hey, Kelrath, come to deliver more bad news? Actually, I came to warn you. The Council is watching everything you do now. They're looking for reasons to disqualify you. She took a drink from her water container. So, I should be careful? Extremely. Or, she said slowly, that dangerous smile appearing again, I could be so good they can't find anything to criticize. That's not how politics works. Maybe it should be. The second trial was scheduled for 2 days later. This one was different, focused on problem-solving under pressure. Candidates would be placed in a simulated crisis scenario, a failing space station with multiple system breakdowns, injured civilians, and limited time before complete structural collapse. The goal wasn't combat, it was rescue, coordination, and decision-making. 20 candidates remained after the first trial. Kira was seated dead last, paired with the lowest-ranked teammate the system could assign, a nervous Quell engineer named Jaxus, who looked ready to molt from anxiety when he learned his partner. I don't want to die, Jaxus whispered to me before the trial started. Humans are supposed to be crazy. What if she does something reckless? Then try to keep up, I suggested, which probably wasn't helpful. The simulation began. The candidates were teleported into the virtual environment, their actions monitored, and scored by an advanced AI system designed to evaluate every decision. I watched Kira's feed with morbid fascination. She materialized on the station's damaged observation deck, alarms blaring, artificial gravity fluctuating. Jaxus appeared beside her, immediately scanning the environment with his technical equipment. Structural integrity at 43%, Jaxus reported, his voice shaking. Multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Life support failing in sections A through F. We have civilians trapped in at least 6 locations. Most candidates would spend precious minutes analyzing the situation, creating detailed plans, establishing communication protocols. Kira looked around once and started moving. We split up. You handle the technical systems, get life support stabilized. I'll get the civilians. That's against protocol. We're supposed to work as a team. We are working as a team. You're doing what you're good at, I'm doing what I'm good at. Now go fix something before this place falls apart. Jaxus hesitated. Then his training took over. He rushed toward the nearest engineering station while Kira sprinted in the opposite direction. She reached the first group of trapped civilians in 90 seconds. They were stuck behind a sealed blast door. The manual override, damaged by fire. Standard procedure required requesting engineering support, analyzing the door mechanism, and carefully bypassing the safety locks. Kira grabbed the door with both hands and pulled. The metal screamed. The door bent. Safety systems that were supposed to prevent exactly this kind of brute force approach failed completely because they'd never been tested against someone with Earth-standard muscle density. The door tore open. 6 civilians stumbled out, shocked but alive. Move to the emergency pods, Kira ordered. Follow the green markers. Go! She didn't wait to see if they obeyed, already running toward the next crisis point. Meanwhile, Jaxus was doing something remarkable. With the pressure off from rescue operations, he was free to focus entirely on systems repair. His technical expertise was actually exceptional, his nervous demeanor hiding genuine skill. Within minutes, he'd stabilized life support in 3 critical sections and rerouted power to keep structural integrity from collapsing completely. They worked like this for the entire simulation. Kira handled anything requiring physical intervention, impossible strength, or split-second decisions. Jaxus managed the technical aspects, his careful precision complementing her aggressive approach. By the time the simulation ended, they'd rescued every civilian, stabilized the station, and even managed to restore partial communications. Their score was announced, 967 points, the highest recorded score in the trial's history. The second highest team scored 704. The crowd's reaction was different this time. Less surprise, more anticipation. They were starting to understand what they were witnessing. Jaxus emerged from the simulation looking dazed. We won! We actually won! You were amazing, Kira told him. That power reroute you did in Section F? Brilliant. But you tore open a blast door with your bare hands. Different skills for different problems. She offered her hand in what I'd learned was a human greeting called a handshake. Good working with you. Jaxus stared at her hand like it might explode, then carefully grasped it. Good working with you, too. The final trial was announced the following day. This one was traditional. Single combat in the grand arena. Each candidate would face opponents in elimination rounds until only one remained. The entire galaxy would be watching. I tried to see Kira before the trial began, but she was already in the preparation chambers, closed off. from outside contact. Instead, I found myself in the administrative booth again, surrounded by council officials who all seemed invested in seeing her fail. "She won't survive the combat rounds," Torvist predicted confidently. "Strength means nothing against a skilled warrior with proper weapons." I didn't argue, but I also didn't agree. The brackets were drawn. Kira's first opponent was a Korthan veteran named Thraxus, famous for winning his last 17 matches through sheer brutality. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating, and wielded a plasma blade that could cut through starship hull material. They entered the arena from opposite sides. The contrast was almost comical. Thraxus looked like a walking tank. Kira looked like someone who'd wandered in from a completely different competition. The trial master raised his hand. "Combatants, prepare. Fight with honor. Begin!" Thraxus charged immediately, plasma blade raised, roaring a battle cry that echoed through the arena. Kira stood still. She waited until Thraxus was 3 steps away, his blade descending in what should have been a killing blow. Then she moved. She sidestepped, not fast enough to seem impossible, but fast enough that Thraxus's momentum carried him past her. As he stumbled, trying to redirect, she kicked the back of his knee joint. Korthan physiology has a weakness there, a gap in the natural armor plating. Most opponents never exploit it, because getting that close to a Korthan in combat is suicide. Kira had studied. She knew. Thraxus crashed to his knees. Before he could recover, she was behind him, one arm wrapped around his neck in what humans call a chokehold. Her other hand grabbed his weapon arm, applying pressure to nerve clusters that shouldn't have been accessible through armor. Thraxus struggled. He was stronger, bigger, equipped with better weapons. None of it mattered. 15 seconds later, he tapped the ground 3 times. The universal signal for surrender. The arena went silent again, then erupted in noise. Kira released Thraxus and helped him stand, which seemed to confuse him more than losing did. "Good match," she said. He stared at her like she'd spoken in an alien language, which, technically, she had. The victories continued. Kira faced 9 opponents over the course of the day. A Thrixian weapons master who relied on range, a Volsari assassin who specialized in speed, a Quell strategist who tried to outthink her, 3 more Korthans who thought size and strength would prevail, a biomechanical hybrid from a species I didn't recognize, and 2 humans from colony worlds who'd been part of the Galactic military for cycles. She beat all of them. Not through luck. Not through tricks, through skill, preparation, and an understanding of combat that went beyond anything the Council had anticipated. By the time the final match was announced, the betting markets had shifted dramatically. Kira was now the favorite to win, and the galaxy was holding its breath. Her final opponent was announced, Commander Vexar, a legendary Jarvian warrior who'd won the trials 3 times previously and currently served as the Council's military advisor. This wasn't random. This was a message. Vexar entered the arena in full ceremonial armor, carrying weapons that represented 30 years of combat experience. He looked at Kira with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You have impressed many," Vexar said, his voice amplified through the arena speakers. "Your skills are undeniable, but this is where your run ends. I have trained for longer than you have been alive." Kira adjusted her stance, hands loose at her sides. "Maybe. Or maybe experience isn't the only thing that matters. Then let us discover the truth together." The trial master signaled the start. Unlike her previous opponents, Vexar didn't charge. He circled, studying her movements, looking for weaknesses. This was a predator, patient and deadly. Kira circled with him, matching his caution. They moved like this for 30 seconds. The crowd grew restless, expecting action. Then Vexar struck, a testing attack designed to probe her defenses. She blocked it, redirected his energy, created space. He attacked again, faster, more committed. She defended, countered, forced him back a step. They exchanged blows, each testing the other, neither giving ground. The arena filled with the sound of impact, metal on flesh, the controlled chaos of high-level combat. Vexar was good, better than good. His techniques were flawless, his timing perfect, his strategy sound. But Kira had something he didn't expect. She had survived Earth. Every predator she'd ever faced was faster than anything in this arena. Every environmental hazard more deadly. Every challenge more desperate. The trials were dangerous, but they were organized danger. Fair danger. Earth didn't do fair. She started adapting. Her movements became less defensive, more aggressive. She stopped reacting to his attacks and started predicting them, reading his body language, anticipating his next move, staying one step ahead. Vexar realized what was happening. I could see it in his posture, the slight hesitation, the moment of doubt. That's when Kira struck. She feinted left, drew his guard, then pivoted right and swept his legs. As he fell, she was already moving, disarming him with a technique I'd never seen before. His weapon clattered across the arena floor. She could have ended it there, knocked him unconscious, claimed victory. Instead, she stepped back and extended her hand. The gesture confused Vexar, confused everyone. "Get up," she said. "Finish this properly." Vexar stared at her hand, then at her face. Something passed between them, an understanding that transcended species. He took her hand. She pulled him up. They faced each other again, both now unarmed. The final exchange was brief. 3 moves. Vexar attacked with everything he had, drawing on decades of experience and warrior pride. Kira met him head-on, matching his skill with raw determination. When it ended, they were both standing, both breathing hard, locked in a mutual hold that could have gone either way. The trial master approached. "This match is declared a draw. Both warriors have demonstrated equal merit." "No," Vexar said, his voice carrying across the arena. He released Kira and stepped back. "The victory belongs to her. She had me disarmed. She chose honor over easy victory. That is the mark of a true warrior." He bowed, a formal Jarvayan gesture of respect. Kira returned the bow, human style, a slight nod of the head. The arena exploded with noise, cheering, shouting, the sound of thousands of beings witnessing something they'd never expected to see. A human had won the trials. The celebration afterward was massive. Candidates from every species congratulated Kira. Even those she'd defeated showed respect, acknowledging her skill. Ambassador Quellen approached me in the administrative booth, his expression unreadable. "You were right to allow her entry." "I was following regulations," I said carefully. "You were following your conscience." He looked down at the arena where Kira was being mobbed by well-wishers and journalists. "We created these trials to identify the best among us, to prove merit over politics. We nearly violated that principle because of fear. What happens now?" "Now?" Quellen's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. "Now we update the regulations, remove the Deathworld ban, open the trials to any species willing to meet the qualifications, and we acknowledge that strength comes in many forms." I watched Kira below, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, all of them wanting to know more about Earth, about humans, about what made her capable of such achievements. She was answering questions, laughing, sharing stories, being exactly what we needed. A bridge between species. A demonstration that cooperation could overcome prejudice. Later that night, after the ceremonies and speeches and official proceedings, I found Kira sitting alone in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. "Congratulations," I said, sitting beside her. "You changed everything today." Did I? Or did I just prove what should have been obvious? That judging people before giving them a chance is stupid? Perhaps both. I paused. "What will you do now? Return to Earth?" She shook her head. "No, I'm staying. The trials were just the beginning. There's a whole galaxy out here, and I want to see what else humans can accomplish. Maybe help a few others who've been told they can't do something just because of where they're from." That sounds like a worthy goal. "Besides," she grinned, "I hear there's an advanced combat training program on Vexar's homeworld. He invited me to join. Said he'd like to learn more about Earth fighting techniques." "You're going to train more warriors?" "Going to share what I know. Let them decide what to do with it." She stretched, yawned. Humans have this saying, "Knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied." Figure the galaxy could use more multiplication and less division. I left her there, looking out at the stars with an expression of contentment and anticipation. The next morning, I processed 17 new applications for the trials. 4 of them were from humans. 2 were from species previously considered too small or weak to compete. 1 was from a Quell, who specifically cited Jaxus's performance as inspiration. The galaxy was changing, not because of rules or regulations or council mandates, because one human kicked down a door, literally and figuratively, and showed everyone what was possible when you stopped making excuses and started taking chances. The trials would never be the same. The regulations would be updated, the prejudices would slowly fade. And somewhere on a training facility 3 sectors away, Kira Vale was probably teaching a group of alien warriors that underestimating someone based on appearance was the fastest way to end up on your back, wondering what happened. I smiled at that thought. Then I approved all 17 applications and prepared for the next cycle of trials. After all, we had rules, thousands of them. But now, finally, they were the right rules. The kind that gave everyone a fair chance to prove what they could accomplish. The kind that made the galaxy better. And if a small human from a Deathworld could teach us that lesson, well, maybe we'd been underestimating Earth all along. The universe was about to find out just how wrong that assumption had been. And I, for one, couldn't wait to see what happened next.